You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 206 of Teach Better Talk. My name is Ray Hewart, and as always, I am with my incredibly annoying co-host, Mr. Jeff Gargas.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. You're like into the mix of school here now, week number 2 for you with virtual. Like, how's life going? I feel like I don't talk to you as much anymore. It's like you have like kids to take care of or something.
I know. Isn't that ridiculous that I have like 11-year-olds sucking up the time and energy that you would normally have? I'm so sorry about that.
It's all right. It's okay. I just, I miss you, Ray. I know we fight on here a lot, but that's,
That's so sweet, Jeff.
We fight not on here too, but
yeah, I miss you a smidgen.
Smidgen, thanks. Anyway, so this was a fun episode. I'm excited to get into this, but I want to see if we can highlight one of our recent blog posts that I think brings up sort of a good topic and a good sort of theme to talk around, if that makes sense. I think I'm saying that the right way. So Caitlin, the boss, as we call her.
Oh, boss lady. What's up with Caitlin? Is she doing okay? I haven't talked to her recently.
I have no idea. I think she's somewhere.
I want to be clear. I actually just lied to you. I was voxing with her earlier today. I didn't mean to lie, but it's my normal response to be like, oh, I haven't talked to them in a while. And then I'm like, no, wait, we actually were just talking.
Well,
sorry.
So she wrote a post recently called Virtual Restorative Circles, which talked about using restorative circles, but now in a virtual world. And I know, we were talking about some of the ways of this idea, this theme around making sure that we are utilizing that time that we get with students live in a virtual classroom, utilizing that to the best of our abilities. And so I thought I'd throw it to you and ask, like, what are some of those, what are you doing during those live times? What are the things that, you're recommending that we keep our eyes on, keep our ears on? What should we be focusing on during that very, very precious time that we get now live with our students? This is me talking if you're in a virtual setting, of course.
No, sure. And even if you're in a hybrid model and you're doing something
very true.
That's virtual, or even if you're whatever, even if you're in person, like, there are purposeful ways to use your time with students. And obviously it looks a little bit different, but I know exactly what post you're referring to because I hadn't read it when it published on our blog, which I know happened recently. I actually read it before when she was drafting that post because we were talking about using time with students really intentionally. And I actually just was live in our private group last night, our private Facebook group that by the way, you could join it at teachbettergroup.com. But I was live there because it wasn't a biweekly family check-in. It wasn't anything formal. I just wanted to go live because I had been in remote learning with my students for an entire week, and I learned so much that I just wanted to take questions and share anything humanly possible that would help some educator somewhere. And this was, Jeff, no joke, this was the most discussed topic that I've gotten, not only in my emails, but on that live video and in text messages and in direct messages. Like, everybody wants to know, what are you doing when you're live with students if you're in a virtual setting? And I think this blog gives so many different ideas on how to use it in a restorative way. But before we get to that, you really need to emphasize with all educators, anytime you're live with students, expect that there's going to be tech issues. Expect that there's going to be students that can't log on because they have hurdles they're overcoming. Expect for your students to be learning in a loud environment. I had a student who spoke out last week and shared their voice in a live video, and literally the sound behind them was like deafening. They had kids running around. They had parents that were yelling. You could hear it in the background. And so we really need to change our thinking that live sessions with students should be instructionally focused. And what I mean by that, it doesn't mean that you can't review procedures or go over common questions or review problems or review, different learning experiences. Like, definitely use that time. But I really want to challenge you all to shift towards these restorative circles or relationship building opportunities and leave the opportunities where you're just talking at your students, like trying to deliver content. Do that in a system like a video, like record yourself doing it, because if it's so important that students need to make sure they can get it, live videos are unpredictable. So we need to shift our mindset. When we're with students, we have to be doing discussions. We have to get them talking. We have to be doing different things to check on their mental health and get them thinking. A lot of the things I've been doing with my students have been focusing on like those essential skills, right? Like, how do you stay organized? How do you follow a calendar? And then if you're just like introducing new content, there are so many other mediums in which to do that doesn't need to happen live on camera with your kiddos, battling all the different hurdles around them. So I love this blog. If you're somebody looking to facilitate virtual restorative circles, there are so many ideas, and explains why you should do them and how to facilitate them. So you know I'm a fan of boss lady Caitlin Giordano, so definitely go check that out. And if you go over to the blog page, it should be like within the first few posts, because this just came out within the last few days.
Yep, awesome. So make sure you check that out. That's all over at teachbetter.com for all that. Let's talk about this episode now with Melissa Cunningham. And you and I are both sitting here, still can't believe that she said this was her first podcast ever, because she was so good, so much value. So Melissa is... she's had a lot of different positions. She is currently an instructional coach, but she's been sixth grade all-inclusive class. She's been a middle school language arts teacher. She's been an assistant principal, and now an instructional coach. I love how she explains what her job really is, and there were so many little things, actually so much value, so much coming out of her that you actually allowed her, or I think nudged her to offer more than just one piece of advice during that question, pushed her that, and I'm pretty sure she gave 3, and there was like 100 other little pieces of advice within those 3 pieces of advice. So really great episode, super excited about it. She's also a Teach Better guest blogger, so a little extra love there, and shout out to her. Ray, anything you want people to focus on or listen for in this episode, other than the fact that the two of you are hanging out tomorrow anyway?
Yeah, I was going to say, Melissa and I need to chat more, but I will encourage all of you. Melissa's written so many blogs for teachbetter.com. You should go check all of those out. She has so much advice to share, but we also totally made her commit to writing way more blogs with us. So not only enjoy this episode, but then keep your eye out for all the content she'll be pushing out within the next few months.
Love it. With that, let's get to episode 206 with Melissa Cunningham.
All right, guys, I'm hitting pause on this episode only to make sure that you have all the details you need for our Mindset Meetup webinar series. Now, for those of you who have not yet registered, this is a 6-week webinar series with all-star educators, guys like Trey Gamage and Dr. Valerie Camille Jones and Kevin Butler and Pete Sloan Joseph, Tracy Bratter, and so many more. Now, you do need to register at teachbetter.com/mindsetmeetup to be a part of the live virtual event, but I want to make sure you had a special 50% off. Let me say it again, 50% off code. So here we go. It's easy. Teach Better Talk. All one word, no spaces. Use that to get 50% off of our Mindset Meetup webinar series over at teachbetter.com/mindsetmeetup. All right, let's get back to this episode.
All right, we are here and we are chatting with Melissa Cunningham. And Melissa, it's so awesome to have you on the show. We've been talking a little bit before we hit record, and we've been connected for a while. It sounds like you and Ray have been working on getting you on this podcast for a while now. You're a guest blogger over at teachbetter.com. We just found out that this is your first podcast ever, which is so awesome that we get to be the podcast that is your first podcast. So super excited about that. Just excited to learn more about you and kind of dive into your story a little bit. But before we get too far into that, how are you feeling right now?
Feeling good. Thanks for having me. Like you said, this has definitely been a long time coming, and I'm excited to do this for my first one. But feeling good. I think we're at my school right now. We're a week and a half into remote learning, working out all the kinks, and I think like everyone else, just trucking along. So doing okay.
Melissa, I am so excited that you are on the podcast, and I feel like I already know that this one's going to be so chock full of amazing information. I'm just so over the moon that you finally got on Teach Better Talk. It only took 206 episodes, so it's not that bad. So before we get too far in, I know we've gotten to chat a bunch. We've been joking about how we need to chat more often in our life, so let's make that a reality. But I want to make sure our listeners get to know you as well. So will you kind of answer that age-old question for you to describe yourself, and like, what's your typical answer when someone asks what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been working in the education field for the last 13 years. So lucky 13, hopefully lucky this year, right? So I've been lucky because I've been able to hold a lot of different roles. So I've always worked with middle school kids, but I've worked sixth grade self-contained all subjects. I have worked as a middle school language arts teacher. I was even assistant principal for 2 years, and now I'm in the role of instructional coach. So definitely a little bit of a different road than maybe some other teachers, but also at the same time, feel very lucky because I feel like I've gotten to see and learn a lot from so many different perspectives with my job. Curriculum instruction is definitely where it's at for me, and working with teachers, I feel like I finally kind of found my niche because I get a chance to not only work with students directly, but I get to work with teachers and help them be able to work on whatever they want to improve. So it's feel like I've found a good balance in there of things. But I feel like at the end of the day, I still call myself a teacher, even though I've been assistant principal, I've been now an instructional coach. At the end of the day, I love working with kids, and I like learning and growing just like any teacher would too.
I love that. I love that you see the value in the fact that you've had so many different perspectives to see, which can only make you better as you learn the way that other roles have to look, and the tasks that they're assigned and that they have to tackle. It's really cool that you've got to experience that. And I love that you say that you still call yourself a teacher, and that no matter what that role is, you still say you're a teacher. And we hear that so often from folks that are in administrative positions and leadership positions that say that. And I love that when they're like, look, title, whatever, I'm a teacher. I've always been a teacher. I'm always going to be a teacher. So I love that about you as well. So let's, one of the things we talk about on this podcast a lot is failure. It's my favorite part of the show. It's my favorite question to ask. And because I love sharing those moments where we've had struggles, we've had challenges, and how we've been able to grow and learn from them. So can you share a story with us about a time that you've had a failure? Tell us what happened. How did you overcome that? And what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, I love this question. And I feel like now, and I wouldn't nowhere near call myself an expert when it comes to teaching yet, probably ever actually, but I feel like it's something I've become really comfortable with over time. And it's taken a long time to get there, to even be comfortable with failure. But I think I've been lucky to have good leaders to work underneath and just good people to collaborate with. And I feel like failure's become something I'm a little bit more comfortable with and willing to take risks. And I feel like two things kind of come to mind when it comes to failure. One of my favorite ones is, as I was in I want to say it was my 7th year of teaching, I started really getting into Genius Hour and problem-based learning and was reading a lot about it. Learn Like a Pirate became one of my favorite books right away by Souers, just about getting kids more to take a leadership role in their learning and just all of those different things. And so with my teaching partner, we went into, we totally flipped our unit when it came to language arts, decided to do a whole problem-based learning unit. Totally had no idea what we were doing. Really just kind of dived in and said, let's just figure it out as we went. And it was a failure. It really was. There was positives to it, but it didn't go as we thought it would. We thought that kids would be so engaged in it, and because it was related and connected to their real life, we realized really quickly kids had a really hard time handling actually some of that freedom. We didn't realize how much they weren't used to that. And then being able to kind of identify ways to intertwine different language arts skills into that, it was definitely a learning experience. And so at the end of the day, when kids had their projects at the end, to be honest, there were some that were really great. A lot of them didn't go the way that we wanted to, but at the end of the day, we were excited that we took that risk. And like always with any failure, we just learned so much from the experience. Like I said, like the freedom of being able to choose your own topic. We learned so much about that and how we could frame those things better. So it was an epic failure without a doubt. But as always, learned so much through the whole experience too.
I think that's one of my favorite things. Like you probably didn't look back at it in the moment when it was happening and go, man, this is a great time for me to learn, right? It was probably not the funnest thing at the time, but I love that we can continue to look back again and again at failures we have and look and say, okay, what have I learned from that? What did I haven't I taken away from that yet? I'm still always looking back like 10, 12 years ago saying, man, I really messed up with that. And that's helping guide me, now 10, 12, 15 years later. So I love that that's how you flip that and look at that. So let's flip that around now. Let's talk about a success that you've had. And this can be something big or something small, but tell us what happened. Why was it a success for you? And then what'd you take away from that experience?
Yeah. And I think like you said too, I mean, and I think the same thing with the success piece of things too, is that, I just think like over time, I just try to look at any experience, whether it's a success or failure. Like I think most of us do, is like, okay, there's something to be learned in every situation. So I feel like when it comes to successes, there's not necessarily a big success that comes to mind, but now being an instructional coach, I feel like there's a lot of little successes that I've been able to find in the last year and a half being in this role. I think one of the things I've been most proud of is just building the relationships I have with the teachers and just the small wins that I've seen teachers gain out of it. So one of my favorite units I did last year with a teacher, we focused on using the reader-writer workshop model in her class. She was a brand new first-year teacher. It was something that she wanted to try. And it was just fun being able to implement it together. And I think one of the most exciting parts was seeing her grow in her confidence as a teacher throughout the process too. And that to me was probably the most successful part, was not even that the students learned, that was great too, but just seeing her gain confidence in her teaching and her becoming more reflective was really fun to see a teacher grow in that way.
I love that your success really is coming down to like the small successes. Cause you're right. We can absolutely like reflect on like big times we won awards or like incredible, crazy moments. But teachers hit successes all the time with just small little like wins. And those small little wins, especially if we can like help others gain them, or you can see those moments in others and reflection, like I love that. That was a great addition for identifying a success. That's really special. When it comes to what is exciting to you, I kind of feel like I'm sensing a theme in your answers. And especially just knowing what we've had conversations about and we'll continue to have conversations about. I love your commitment to like really purposeful student engagement and lesson design, everything in between. But I won't necessarily like force you to have that answer. I just want to know, if you had to pick something that was getting you excited about education, really like fueling your fire in all that you do, what would that be?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I feel like from the beginning, purposeful learning and making it those real life connections with kids is huge. And now with so many of us being in virtual learning right now, I feel like what's exciting me is really rethinking how does that look like in the virtual classroom right now. And I think something particularly with that too is really how can we get students still taking that leadership role even in the virtual classroom? So whether it's them being in charge of being leaders in collaborative discussions, or them being in charge of brain breaks, or whatever it is, I've been having a lot of fun rethinking that with teachers right now. What does that leadership look like in the classroom for kids in the virtual room? And just the engagement piece too. I mean, I think all of us are in the same boat when it comes to that right now, is how do we keep getting kids engaged? And one of my favorite people I follow on Instagram right now is Megan Hargrave. She happens to be an ELA consultant that works with our school actually too. One of my favorite things I've seen from her is this chart that she made that talked about practices that we had in the classroom, and now how can that look like in the virtual classroom? And I feel like for some reason that just clicked for me. I'm like, oh, that's what that can look like now in the virtual classroom. And she just packed full of so many ideas for that engagement and that student leadership too, which I love.
Oh, that's super good. Absolutely. And this is why we get along so well, because I love that this is
Yes.
always your focus. I literally could talk shop about this forever.
Me too.
Seriously. And it's funny because while I could talk shop about it, I feel like with all the support you give teachers and all the different things that we could touch on to really get all teachers and support all teachers really giving their all in creating purposeful learning experiences, I totally would ask you one piece of advice, which is always our question 5. So if you had to pick one piece of advice, And maybe I'm going to give you two because I want you to give a piece of advice for purposeful learning and also maybe just a general one, because usually this question has to do with just a piece of advice for any educator who is striving to be better. So Jeff, I'm breaking the rules. I'm giving her two. Come on, it's Melissa. It's fine.
Okay. I'm good with that.
I need like two. One maybe more specific, and then you go with whatever you want after that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, because I feel like when we talk about making learning purposeful in that real life application, I feel like we know it can be hard. Ray and I were just talking about before this, how we do it in math, and she's a guru. You for sure are a guru when it comes to that. So in certain content areas, I feel like it can be hard. So I think one of my pieces of advice is, and I think this has helped me in my career, is just thinking, okay, what's the real purpose of kids learning this? How is this going to help this? How does this connect to their lives? I feel like just that simple question, maybe of just helping you reflect on your lessons even, or reflect when you're planning a unit, just always thinking about how does this go back to the purpose? I think that would be a easy piece of advice, maybe not easy in actual application, but at least just to keep it in the back of our minds. Okay, how are we making this learning purposeful for kids? What is the true purpose for kids learning this? And I feel like with new teachers, and again, easier said than done, but I think something that has helped me be able to grow is, and I know we hear this a lot now, but just being able to be vulnerable and willing to take risks and willing to ask for feedback. I wish as a new teacher that I would have been more willing to do that from the get-go. I feel like I would have grown so much more quickly if I would have just been able to be a little more vulnerable and take some of those risks. And we know there's so many people out there from on Twitter or in your own building that are willing to help you and give you feedback and advice. So just being open to that alone, I feel like is so important, especially at the beginning of your career too. And I feel like it helps with that burnout too, right? Like we're not in this by ourselves. That's one of the best things I love about working in a middle school is that we're always on teams. We're always collaborating together. No one is in this alone.
There's a whole lot of advice in there.
Too much?
I told you.
No, not too much. I know, but she packed like a whole bunch within each of those. So like that was good. It was well done. I love it. All right, let's keep having some fun here. We're gonna do the next 6 questions. Your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. Are you ready?
Whew, I'm ready.
All right, give us one EdTech tool you cannot live without.
I think it's Google Slides for me right now and Nearpod. Nearpod's a new tool I just figured out to make them engaging. I love it.
Give us a book you're reading right now.
Ooh, this is a hard one. I'm reading a lot of books right now. But one of the ones I like really right now is Fostering Resilient Learners, especially with the conversations about diversity going on right now. It's an excellent book with some really good, easy applications in the classroom.
Who do we need to follow on social media today?
One of the people I love right now is Amanda Sandoval. She's a social studies teacher. Her tech tools that she's using for remote learning right now are unbelievable. Between Google Slides and her PD, she's amazing.
Give us a good YouTube channel or website for educators to check out.
So this one's a little tied to coaching, instructional coaching, but it works for teachers too with students in the classroom. Really like the National School Reform Faculty for their protocols and their activities for getting teachers to look at data or collaboration, but they also work really well for kids too.
And give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
So this is one I'm giving, but I'll be honest, I don't follow very well and I need to. But from my coworker, Lauren, at the end of the day, I try to follow hers of setting a timer. And when that timer goes off, that I leave my work for that day and I go home. Easier said than done.
Much easier said than done.
Oh
but
my
still
God, that's
really, really
so hard to do.
So hard to do. And I don't follow it, and I need to.
You need to follow it.
I do. And I'd say meditation. That's my other go-to for sure, too.
Give us, finally, the best piece of advice you've ever received.
So this is a tough one, but I think one of the ones I like the most is I've been following a lot of meditation work, like I was just saying, and this quote always sticks out to me is, whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. And that's something I try to keep in the back of my mind because things can go bad and it's easy to blame. I try to keep that I can only control myself. That's probably my best piece of advice that I try to follow on a daily basis.
Wait. You have to repeat that way slower because I feel like this was like, I need to hear that twice.
Yeah. So, of course, I think it's Eckhart Tolle is the one that said it. It's in one of his books, but it says, whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it.
Jeff, if that is not a mic drop, I don't know what is.
I love it.
Again, easier said than done, but I love it.
You know what? I know this sounds silly, but I almost feel like that one's easier than the boundaries one. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I actually think you're right. That is true.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely is.
But I want to make sure, Melissa, everybody stays connected to you. I love all that you're doing. I'm so glad that you're able to be on the Teach Better Talk podcast. You definitely did not come across as somebody who is like new to this whole thing. You're so knowledgeable, and like your ability to coach educators is so clear. And I love not only reading that in your blogs, but also hearing it in the episode today. Can you kind of share how people can stay connected to you, whether it be like Twitter, Instagram, or anything in between?
Yeah, thank you for saying that too. So on Twitter and Instagram, I have the same handle. So it's Mel Instruct Coach, but it's MELINSTR Coach. And then I do have a website that's kind of a work in progress right now, but it's melcunningham.com. So kind of tweaking it, thinking of taking more of an approach like that quote that I was just saying, and thinking how I can support educators and just our mindset and how we make sure that we're, taking care of ourselves. So work in progress there, but that's my website too.
I love it. And you can find all the links, all the resources we've mentioned in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as those really important links for connecting with Melissa and keeping this conversation going. So head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and a review, we'd really appreciate that as well. And let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and connect with these amazing educators and share this podcast with them. Melissa, this was fantastic. I agree with Ray. I do not believe that this was your first one. And I hope that this is just the first of many, many more podcasts that you're going to be on, so you can continue to share in the value that you brought here today. I'm super excited for everyone to listen to it, and really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for hanging out with us for a little while.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast, and I hope I can do it again soon too.
Until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.